rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie the Riveter.
On December 8, 1941, the United States entered World War II. Men started to leave their jobs and enlist in the Army.
This left many jobs that needed to be filled. Large factories needed to make weapons and other war supplies, but the men needed to run these factories were being deployed overseas.
Before the 1940s, middle-class American women stayed home to take care of the house and family. This belief that a woman's place in the home dramatically changed when they were needed to fill the men's jobs.
Or they were asking for help out at the steel plant.
It was quite a shock to have the men leave and the women taking over, not knowing much about factory work. Before then, most of the woman's time was occupied with childcare, cooking, and cleaning.
Because of the Great Depression, there were not many jobs available to women. The jobs that were available were less important, low-income jobs compared to the ones men had. Because of this, many people were skeptical about women working in factories.
In the beginning, husbands, managers, male workers, and even women were against the idea.
Government then had to create propaganda to convince women to join the workforce. One of the first forms of this propaganda used was the Rosie the Riveter song by Red Evans and John Jacob Loeb.
All the day long, whether rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie the Riveter keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage, sitting up there on the fuselage. That little frail can do more than a male can do. Rosie the Riveter. Rosie's got a boyfriend, Charlie. Charlie, he's a Marine. Rosie is protecting Charlie, working overtime on the riveting machine. When they gave her a production knee, she was as proud as a girl could be. There's something true about red, white, and blue about Rosie the Riveter.
Women were convinced to work because it was considered their patriotic duty. Rallies, national advertising campaigns, posters, and subway cards portrayed women working as powerful, competent, and strong, but still feminine.
In the advertisements, women wore lipstick, jewelry, and nail polish, but also wore overalls and were doing a man's job.
My brother said, "I want you and Mother to go tomorrow early to Ford's in Dearborn," and he said they're going to hire the first 100 women to work in the assembly line. At one time, I was working for Hans Wesson, and I heard that they needed help at Douglas. My cousin took me down to Douglas and got a job down there, and I worked on the B-17 bombers. I was inside the plane. We worked on the where the turret gun was, with the gun that went out the window.
There were three main groups who were influenced by the government's propaganda. The first was women who had already worked in laundries and other jobs that were considered suitable for women. They switched from their inferior job to higher-paying factory jobs.
The second group was made up of women who had worked but lost their job during the Depression. The largest group of women consisted of 6 million white, married, middle-class women who joined the workforce in 1942.
I worked at Cessna and I worked at this other plant where we made glider parts. And they had a shop where all those things were made in a jig, and you had to glue those things together. And they made parts that went into wings to hold them together.
These women finally got to leave their homes to go work in factories operating machines. Before being able to work the machines, they got trained for 3 weeks. Women excelled quickly at the jobs that were considered unfeminine, like engine repair, riveting, and welding.
So I went out there and I decided they were asking for help, so I went to out there to apply for a job, and sure enough, they were hiring. All the women were lined up, all applying for jobs. So they processed us right through, taking our pictures, making us badges to get in and out of the steel plant, and wanted us to come to work right away.
The women also did jobs that were necessities of war, like producing food and clothing. They were also needed for everyday jobs like ticket agents, farmers, telephone operators, grocery clerks, and elevator operators. These jobs were essential to maintain regular living.
Older women who could not work in factories took care of the working women's
this
children.
is shift work. We worked from 12 to 8, and 8 to 4, and 4 to 12. So we had every week we changed. And so then I needed a babysitter. After all, I had these 3 little kids, and I thought, boy, what am I going to do now?
Before the war, women were thought to be incapable of doing a man's job. Throughout World War II, the stereotype for women changed.
Women were used to staying home to cook, clean, and take care of the kids.
They had a certain appearance to uphold. This appearance began to change when they began working in factories.
They changed the belief that they were just mothers and wives. Women could now wear pants in public, which could not have happened before the war. When women took jobs, they felt freedom and independence that they never felt as a housewife.
They started the realization that middle-class women could work and run a home, even though poorer women had always done so. After the war, the women gained confidence and self-value.
Although many of them were encouraged to go back to being housewives, many women still wanted to stay in their jobs. Within a few years of the ending of the war in 1945, the unemployment of women was back to its wartime peak and was still climbing.
Their new jobs helped keep society running smoothly and showed men that they could be part of the working class. This job rate changed how women were perceived in everyday society.
They proved that they were just as capable as men and started doing things that they never would have without Rosie the Riveter.
Rosie's got a boyfriend, Charlie. Charlie, he's a Marine. Rosie is protecting Charlie, working overtime on the riveting machine.